listening to the Soul Signals podcast, and I'm your host, Lanessa Renee. Join us to hear insights and unique experiences as I navigate my twin flame journey and spirituality. Hello, beautiful people. I'm Lanessa Renee. I'm an intuitive advisor and diviner, but previous to that, I was in customer service for nearly 15 years. I'm also an art school grad. I got my Bachelor of Arts in Fashion and Retail Management, but that's another world, another life. A little more about me at the start of the pandemic last year. I had what I guess you would call a rapid awakening, and this resulted in a major transformation in my life, and it propelled me towards finding my life's purpose. And this is what usually happens when we have these kinds of shifts in consciousness. It pretty much goes the same for everybody. So I found myself going down the rabbit hole that is spirituality, like I'm sure so many others of you have done. And I started learning and discovering things, especially about myself, because that's what it's all about, right? It's about self-discovery and learning who you are. So I'm on this path, maybe about a month or so, when I experienced a Kundalini awakening. And of course, at the time, I had no idea what it was, but it shattered the perceptions of my current reality at the time. And, I've never looked back after that. I've had so many supernatural experiences, which of course I'll eventually share in this podcast. But I've learned so much. Very early on, I became very interested in divination. Like I'm sure you all listening can relate. And I started doing it for myself. I became very good at it without much instruction. It's like this innate knowledge just awakened in me that I'd already had from past lifetimes. It just kind of kicked in. So because of this, I was very interested in it. I started watching a lot of readings on YouTube, social media, getting my own readings or doing my own readings. And once you get started, you're just so in awe and you're constantly curious about your future. And of course, a reoccurring theme always comes up in these types of readings for everyone, and it's love and relationships. So fast forward, I start learning through readings and even my own personal ones that I would do for myself on a daily basis, that I would soon be meeting a soulmate or a twin flame. Now, I had basic knowledge of what a soulmate was, but twin flames were kind of a foreign concept. So, of course, I took to the internet in mad fashion and I researched and looked for people's experiences, and the results were just crazy and overwhelming. I was either met with the idealization of these relationships, like people putting them on a pedestal, like you have to have this magical experience. That was like the vibe that I got. And, it was very intimidating and off-putting. And then at the opposite end of this spectrum, very crazily, I was met with a very negative or disparaging view of these kinds of relationships, which led me to, the sort of rant that you're about to hear. And, if someone had asked me why I was interested in making this Soul Signals podcast, what I'm about to say is pretty much what sums everything up. So, with that being said, twin flame relationships often get a bad rep, because people are often traumatized by the stories they hear, because you don't hear a lot about stories that have a positive outcome. You mostly hear stories when there is a negative outcome because people are traumatized, of course. But it's important to realize that you can't compare any two journeys because every journey is unique, and it's ultimately the twin flame relationship is meant to transform you into a better version of yourself. It's like the ultimate spark towards self discovery and self love. It's meant to shape you and teach you what you deserve as a person, especially in relationships. And sometimes they're only there in your life for a season. Sometimes you aren't meant to be in union, like they may be preparing you for a better or a more higher evolved spiritual relationship. But a lot of times you're meant to be in union, and what determines that is your own personal evolution. A lot of times when people meet their twin, it's like a situation of right person but wrong time. They're not necessarily trying to evolve or change spiritually, and of course that could be for you, them, or both of you. So of course that's going to be a recipe for disaster. Of course you're going to be traumatized because this relationship triggers a lot of healing. And if you don't recognize this, if you're not ready or willing to do the work that goes into it, then you'll become very frustrated. You'll be like, what in the hell is this about? And even in my case, I know what it's about. I recognize it, and I'm willing to do the healing, and I still get frustrated as hell. So I can only imagine how it is for people who don't know or understand, when they meet this person. But I just would like to dispel all of the negativity that surrounds it because it gets a bad rep. And if two individuals are willing to do the inner work, the healing, love themselves and work towards being the best version of themselves, then twin flame journeys can be the most beautiful healing journeys. It's just like, let's say you have two rocks and they need to become stones. When you rub these two rocks together, because they're bumpy, there's going to be friction. There's going to be pain. It's not going to be all smooth sailing because you're trying to smooth the rocks. You're trying to make them stones, but once you get to a certain point, as the rocks get smoother, then things go better, and the twin flame journey is like that. Once you've evolved, once you've healed and you're in union, there's no tug of war or serious issues. It can then develop into an even greater and more spiritual relationship, like a divine partnership, when you come together to complete your soul mission as a couple. And at this point, you're on the same vibration or frequency. You're in full alignment with each other and your purpose. And so you do the work that you were born to do. And right now, because so many people are waking up, there's a ton of throwing labels around. So everybody wants to have a soulmate or a twin flame. But these kinds of connections have been around since the beginning of time. There just was no label attached to it. So there have been many positive, nurturing, beautiful partnerships that were indeed twin flame relationships, or at least they started out that way, and they benefited the world in some way. But no one said, oh, this is my twin flame, or this is my, because we weren't really focused on or concerned about any of that. We were just living our lives and carrying on, experiencing things. But now, because there's labels and people are waking up and understanding certain things, they're quick to label, this happened or this went wrong. Oh, it's because they're my twin flame. This is why I had these issues. And it's like, no, stop. Because a lot of people are getting scared of even meeting their twin flame because of the horror stories they've heard. And my whole thing is, I believe before you came into this world, you decided certain things would happen in your life, because everything that happens in life, your free will triggers a certain sequence. It's like, an example is like, it's like a movie. If this thing happens or you choose a certain option, it's like, okay, send in this actor or cue this sequence. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever seen like those interactive shows they have on Netflix where they, or they even have it in some games. I know like Game of Thrones had one, but they give you more than one option, and it's up to the viewer to choose which option you want to go with. And based on what you choose, the story unfolds in a certain manner. And I believe our lives are pretty much the same. Um, the situations, the people, the places, all of those things you were aware of could possibly happen, but because you wanted to have a certain experience, you wanted to learn certain lessons, um, you know, you decided what could possibly happen. And this is what I believe. Um, you wanted a certain experience, you wanted to learn certain lessons. Otherwise, what are we here for? So, if a twin flame is part of that, don't try to control the outcome. Don't be scared. And I know, don't just let things happen because you wanted that experience. And the best thing you can do in this kind of relationship is work on yourself. You can't change the other person, you can't control what they are going through. And I'm talking to myself as well, because let's be honest, I've experienced a lot of things, a lot of frustrations, and you can't change the other person, even though you may be tempted to. You just have to focus and work on yourself, because this kind of relationship is all about self discovery, self love, and self healing. It's all about the self, because when you think about it, your twin is supposedly you in another body or form. If you are a feminine, then your twin flame is like your masculine counterpart. And if you are masculine, and I'm just talking about the energies, not the gender, then your twin flame is your feminine counterpart. That's what it's supposed to be, essentially. So as you love yourself, you're technically loving your twin. And as your twin loves themselves, they're loving you, because you're literally in a relationship with yourself. So it's all about yourself. It's all about you evolving and loving yourself and knowing what you deserve, your worth, getting to a point after you've had so many other tough lessons in other relationships, mostly karmic, and we'll get into more details about that, or maybe even some soulmates you've met along the way. But it's about yourself. So don't compare your experience or be scared of your experience based on what other people have gone through. There's a whole bunch of different factors that go into it. I mean, even listening to me now, I'm just sharing my experience. So don't even take this as gospel. What I will say though is, when you hear people, because one thing I haven't really, been happy about or appreciating, especially being on the twin flame journey myself, is when I hear certain people in the spiritual community pass a judgment or condemn these kinds of relationships. It's like, is that your place? Because you don't really understand. Like, there's only so much or only so much we understand, especially if you haven't experienced it yourself. So it's like, no, no two journeys are alike. You don't really understand, because the stuff that I've experienced, I've never heard anyone talk about. I've never heard anyone mention it. especially like most of my supernatural experiences, which I plan to share also in this podcast. Um, so I know that what I'm experiencing is real, whether people will choose to believe it or not. But that's lets me know that when certain people speak negatively about it, they couldn't have possibly um, experienced, what I've experienced. And it's fine to have an opinion. It's fine to care about other people's well being, but you shouldn't make a final say or a judgment. Like, even what I'm saying, I'll just be saying things to spark your own inner dialogue, because whenever you speak to someone who's into divination, metaphysics, or the spiritual community, they should seek to empower you to make your own choice. I'll say it again. They should seek to empower you to make your own choice. If you are practicing under someone, learning from someone, or getting services from someone, they shouldn't give you a final say. That's why we are called seers, because we are meant to tell people who come to us what we see. We are meant to give them advice, confirm most of the time what they already know, and empower them to make their own choices. Plus, energy is mutable, it's constantly changing. So, something that I may tell you today from a reading could be different or change depending on the choices you make, of course, because, like I said, we all have free will. So, I say that to say being it's not their decision to make. Being on a spiritual journey is all about trusting yourself, trusting the compass or the divine flashlight that you were given when you came into this world. So the right people will give advice and leave it open for you to choose. They'll give you their opinions, or they'll give you their interpretations, but they won't make a final decision, because it's not their decision, it's your decision. They should seek to empower you to make your own decision, because that's what it's all about. It's about helping you get to a certain place where at some point you won't even need their help, because you'll just know based on your own compass when someone says something that, okay, this doesn't resonate, it doesn't feel right. You'll be able to say right away, no, that's not true. So I implore you, when you're listening to certain people, even this podcast, form your own decision based on your own gut, your own intuition, what rings true for you, what resonates in your heart. Quiet down, listen to your heart space, feel in your body or your mind or your third eye, because this is all of the places that I feel things, whether or not something is true and whether or not it's something that works for you. And that's all I have to say. And I'm speaking about all of this because I kept seeing or keep seeing readings or social media posts or, just random things on the internet where people all but bash the twin flame journey. And I feel like a lot of it is because they had bad experiences or they haven't experienced it yet. And honestly, not everyone is going to experience it in any given lifetime, because sometimes that person is not even incarnated with you. They're just choosing to guide you as one of your spirit guides. So it's not something that has to happen or you have to have, and it's not something to glorify or put on a pedestal or anything like that. And if I'm ever guilty of putting it on a pedestal, or if I'm ever guilty of making it more than it needs to be, please write me a message, send me an email, because that is not the point of this podcast. The point of this podcast is to show a different side, because most of the time it's been my experience that there's so much negativity that's cast on it. And it's, it's not completely negative. And then on the other end is the glorifying of it and leaving out all of the difficulties and just how tough it can be, especially for people who are new to spirituality. It's like that's all they want, and it's like, no, slow down. There's so much more to it than that. And it's like, once you understand what it's about, and once you decide, you and the person, of course, because it takes two, once you both decide you want to be together, and you do the healing on your own, and you evolve on your own, then you come together, and then you have the possibility to develop into something greater, like a divine partnership, which is the greatest relationship you can have, in my personal opinion. It's where you're both invested in becoming better versions of yourself, and you're working together to fulfill a common purpose that you were sent here for. So that was a lot. I'm going to get off my soapbox now, but I just wanted to speak about that because it's so frustrating and so stressful, because I see so many people hella scared and worried about being on a twin flame journey. And there are a lot of people awakening and experiencing twin flame journeys. So they're understandably afraid when the vast majority of the information out there is including, people's traumatic experiences. So I just want to be the person that eases your mind, or gives you some comfort and reassurance, hope, and helps you understand that you shouldn't compare yourself to other people, because there are so many different ways that this relationship can go or manifest in your life. It's not it doesn't have to be all toxic and terrible and frustrating, even though it definitely can be. Don't get me wrong. It just depends on the individuals involved, really. So with that being said, I'd like to take this time to invite all of you to follow along as I experience my own twin flame journey and spiritual evolution. I'll start from the beginning, and I'll be as transparent as possible. I'll tell things from my perspective. I'll share my supernatural experiences. Of course, eventually, it's my hope that other guests who have experienced it will be joining, as well as my twin flame, just so you can get another perspective or the full picture. So if you're ready, buckle up, because things are gonna get interesting. And as always, thank you for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in more, you can check out our blog at soulsignalspodcast.com. Goes a little deeper into my experiences. You can also follow us over on IG, Facebook, or TikTok at Soul Signals Podcast for more content or to continue on the conversation. Have a comment or a question you need help with? Well, you can send us a recording or message to info@soulsignalspodcast.com that we may even end up featuring on the show. Till next time, take care.